How's it going, everyone? This is Derek Afasi, the owner of Afasi Financial Group and RetireSharp.com. Today's topic, I want to go over 401k explained for dummies. I do not wish to offend anybody on that, the titling of this video, but I just want to try to break down the 401k plans in very simplistic language. Go over some of the pros, some of the cons. I'm also going to offer a free report throughout this video, and you also see the link in the description of this video where you could download a "What Should I Do with My Old 401k" report. So definitely be sure to check that out. So to get started, what is a 401k plan? A 401k plan is offered for an employee of a private institution when they start working, for that company. So what essentially is happening is somebody's going to work for a private company. They're given their employer benefits package. So maybe that's their health insurance, their disability insurance, any sort of ancillary, information. And then they're saying, oh, by the way, if you want, you could take a percentage of your salary and invest it into our company 401k plan. So a 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement plan. It's basically an account that you're trying to place monies aside for your retirement years. So when it's set up through the employer, a 401k would be set up by private companies, just like a 403b could be set up by state entities or nonprofit organizations. Just like a 457 plan would be set up through municipalities, or a TSP, thrift savings plan, would be set up for federal employees. So it's all by how these qualified plans are subject to the tax codes. So with the 401k, think of this like a bucket. The way on how this bucket grows is by the contributions that are being placed into this plan and the rate of return that is coming back regarding this plan. So as an example, a really easy example, someone's making $100,000 and they're working for a company and they say, okay, I want to put 10% of my salary every year into a 401k account. Well, if they're making $100,000, that means $10,000 is going into this contribution side. This contribution side is the controllable. That's what somebody can control. If they're going and they're placing monies in there, just like, instead of putting 10% of their salary in there, they're putting 3% of their salary. Well, now that means that they're only putting $3,000 into that account. So that's the contribution side of the coin. Every time that they're adding contributions into it, it's obviously adding a positive into this bucket. What's typically overlooked is this side. And individuals just say, okay, as long as I'm, this money is coming out of my paycheck, it's going into my 401k plan, it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's going to be invested somehow into the different investment options that I have available through my 401k account. And I'll just kind of, cherry pick some funds and, just kind of call it a day. And that's the problem, is individuals, they do not focus in on this section enough. And if they're super aggressive out of a time that they should be, super conservative, or they're super conservative when they might want to be super aggressive, that could obviously have an impact. And what I mean by that is the ROR, the rate of return side, is all based upon the investment options. Kind of think of them as eggs in a basket to choose from, to say, as you're making contributions into this 401k related bucket, how can we grow this money even further? So it goes by the contributions the person's placing in there, and then the rate of return that are coming back based upon the investments that are set up within that plan, or the investment options that are available for that plan. So as I break down those two components into somewhat simplistic language, the contribution side, how this contribution could act even more favorable is, obviously, if somebody's adding more monies into their bucket, obviously more monies are growing, into their account. Just like a savings account, if you saved $100,000 every single year, well then, you're going to have savings of $100,000. If you put nothing into your savings account at the end of the year, you're going to have no dollars in there. So this is obviously the controllable. Where some employers may be better than others is something known as an employee match or employer match. And what that means is there's going to be a set percentage. Now, some employers have gone away from the match altogether, and they say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Employee, be happy you have a job, but we're not going to match anything for your 401k account. And then some employers have very favorable employee matches. So what a match is just basically they're trying to retain their good employees, and they're trying to benefit their employees. And they're saying, okay, if you're going and let's say we're giving you an offering of a 401k plan, that you can go and add your dollars into this account, and let's say that your employer matches 3%. Well, if we use that same example that someone's making $100,000, what this means is if they put 3% of their salary into the contribution side, if they're contributing 3% into the 401k plan, the company will also be matching 3%. So therefore, instead of only $3,000 going to this bucket from your contribution, the employer is also placing $3,000 in there. So now you have $6,000 that are getting set up into this positive side, into that, that calculation of what determines the account balance in a 401k account. So, but be mindful of this. They're not just saying, okay, and this is the large misconception that comes about, is anytime I ask, okay, how much is your employer matching? And they say, oh, 100%. I'm like, well, it doesn't work like that. They're like, no. If I put in, 50 grand into a 401k account, they're going to go and give me all 50 grand. So I have 100 grand that's going into my 401k account. And, just be mindful. There's cap limits to contributions. So that's already an inaccurate statement. And then the other thing is an employer is not going to be that nice. They're not going to give you 100%. Typically, you run 3% is going to be the average. You might see some as high as like 6% if you have a specific vesting schedule, meaning that you've been there for a long time. They may give you better benefits than with other employers. Basically, to say, okay, there's going to be an incentive to try to stay with our company. But ultimately, just be mindful if someone's giving you a 3% match and you put 10% of your salary in there, you're going to put in $10,000 in this example, and they're only going to be placing $3,000 into that account. So now $13,000 went in there. If, let's say, you have up to 3% match and you put $1,000 of your money's 1%, they're only going to match you 1%. So it's up to that, whatever that cap limit. And then you have a little bit of play on words where you might see like 50% up to 6%. So what that means is if you put in 6% or $6,000 in that example, they're going to match you $3,000. So it's just an incentive for you to put more monies in there. Same thing. If he says 50% up to 6%, and let's say you only put 3% of your monies in there, they're only going to match you 1.5% because it's 50% all the way up to that marker. If let's say you put in 10% and it's 50% up to 6%, they're only going to match you 3%, or in this example, $3,000 to your $10,000. So I hope that contribution side makes sense, because that's where we get a lot of questions that they don't understand how that match works. And just be mindful that even if you see 100%, typically what that means is 100% up to a specific limit. So now the opposite side of the coin, and the secondary part to that formula, if we have contributions and rate of return, this is the side that's typically overlooked, and this is what we try to help out individuals with the most. What this is the rate of return. So typically when an individual is given their 401k package and they're saying, okay, you have different investments, or you have these investment options that you could choose, typically that's going to range anywhere from about 5 funds to right around 25 funds to choose. So what that means is these are, once again, the eggs in the basket. Some of these funds may be super aggressive, meaning that you're going to have a higher equity-based position, higher position towards stocks, than something that might be more conservative will have a higher position towards fixed income and bonds. So because there's a larger risk when it comes to stocks, that's why it's saying it's aggressive. So you have a larger risk, and you have historically a higher rate of return, or a higher potential rate of return with equity positions than you would with bonds, which typically have a lower risk and has a lower rate of return. So that's where you might have something that's balanced funds, like a 60-40 base portfolio, which will be like 60% stocks, 40% bonds, so you have a mixture of them. So with this portion in mind, with financial planning, it could really be broken down into 2 main sections. You have one section which is known as the wealth accumulation stage, and you have the other section which is known as the wealth preservation and distribution phase. So when somebody starts working, and let's say they're in their 20s, they're in their 30s, and they're trying to accumulate their wealth, well, if they're going and they're trying to take on more risk to have a higher rate of return, because the market's going to be more volatile than something that might be more fixed, well, then this will give them that longer time horizon. So they might be trying to accumulate their wealth and be in a much more aggressive portfolio, one that's weighted closer to stocks than with bonds. And then when someone starts nearing that retirement date, and now they have to start preserving their accounts and create a proper distribution strategy, that's where they'll start scaling it down. So there's a couple of theories out there. There's a couple of strategies out there. A really simple one that you could kind of use as a takeaway is something known as the rule of 100. What that means is whatever your age is, you deduct that from 100, and then that's what should be, rule of thumb, your equity-based position or your stock-related position. So like, if somebody is 30 years old and they're setting up their 401k account, they don't know how to blend the proper strategy, and they're just looking for really easy ways to kind of figure that out. They could leverage something known as the rule of 100, where they say, okay, well, 30% of the money should be into some sort of fixed income, conservative based position, and then maybe 70% should be set up into something more aggressive type position. And then, 10 years later, maybe they should go into 40% bonds and then 60% stocks. And then, 10 years later, maybe they should go 50-50. So there's different ways on how to, control that mechanism. What we like to do is leverage a lot of math and science. So we have these tools. We use risk tolerance questionnaires because each personality is going to be different. It really depends upon, all because you're age 30 or age 50 or age 45, rather than try to put you into a blanket situation, we like to be very specific. So, if you don't like to take on a lot of risk, you should not be having a lot of risk into your portfolio. If you do like to take on a lot of risk, well, then maybe it might be more appropriate to do a stress test off of these funds and say, okay, which one is going to give you, the highest quality, that has historically produced the best rates of return, with the cheapest related costs involved. So that's where we run, different reports for individuals to help them understand how to accumulate their 401ks properly, or at least have the knowledge, so that they're making sure that they're checking their bases rather than just go blindly into this rate of return side. And the main reason why I bring that up is when somebody messes up on this rate of return and they went too aggressive, or they didn't really know what they were investing their monies into, and the stock market crashes, well, think of this bucket. Think of that 401k bucket. If the market went down 30%, well, now it's equivalent to someone taking a sword and slicing that bucket by a third, or a little less than a third, or let's say the market went down 50%. It's equivalent to someone taking a sword and slicing that bucket in half. So that's where you just want to make sure you're taking the proper steps. This rate of return could be a great thing, could be positive, or it could be negative. So, the contributions are always going to add some sort of positives into the account, but somebody could be contributing for years, 10, 20, 30 years, have this 401k account nice and fat. Let's say it's sitting at $1 million right before the person's going to retire, but they never made any changes to their rate of return, to their investment strategies, and they stayed super aggressive when maybe they should have been more conservative. And then, bam, they get hit with a minus 30%, minus 40% hit. And now they have, 600, 700,000. They took a $300,000, $400,000 hit in just that 1 year. So that's why you want to be very careful. You want to be very methodical with how that plan works. And at any point in time, if you want to speak to a specialist and try to help understand your situation better, simply call our 1-800 number. It's 1-800-566-1002. Or you can go to our website, retiresharp.com or fosseyfinancial.com. And then you could book a calendar appointment directly through phone call with a specialist to walk you through these things, to run you these reports, maybe gauge, see exactly what your situation is, and see if there are ways to improve it. See if there even is any problems with your situation, or you should just stay put to what you're doing right now. So it's just with retirement planning, there's you do not want to leave things to chance. There's an error in retirement could be devastating. It could be the difference between enjoying your retirement years or being absolutely terrified and having to work for a very long time. So, now with this whole COVID situation and everyone, being able to kind of research a little bit more, unfortunately, some people were, unemployed due to this COVID situation. These are big impacts, and this is where you should really hunker down and understand how crucial it is to have, to have certain methods and certain strategies in place. And then lastly, how is someone supposed to be leveraging a 401k related account for their retirement planning? And there's a situation, or there's basically a very simple strategy that we like to use in-house. It's our Retire Sharp planning system, and it's called the 3-thing scenario. And basically what we say is there's 3 things that every individual needs to figure out before they're retired, or if they're currently retired, how to stay retired forever. Those 3 things. The number 1 most important thing is income. The number 2 thing is emergency. And then the number 3 thing is inflation/growth protection. So in order to accomplish this successfully, An individual needs to figure out step 1 before they can move on to step 2. They need to figure out step 1 and 2 before they can move on to step 3. So with income, when somebody retires, they need to make sure that they have their income is greater than or equal to what their expenses are for retirement. So typical things that give income during somebody's retirement years would be Social Security income, which would be a lifetime income stream, pension income, if they're receiving a pension plan through their employer, which unfortunately has really dropped by the wayside. You might have 10, possibly 15% of individuals, of Americans, are actually offered a pension plan anymore, or at least going to be able to collect a pension plan. And then you also could go to different financial products such as annuities, different things that will provide some sort of cash flow that is backed by an insurance company that can produce that. So when somebody has retirement accounts such as 401ks, IRA accounts, what they could do is leverage those accounts and make sure that it's structured into these areas properly. So you're using the smallest amount of dollars only as much as necessary to produce that minimum income stream to give you that safety net, so that when you move on to step 2, emergency is rule of thumb, someone should have about 6 to 12 months of what their expenses are into some sort of liquid account, so they can have in that kind of, excuse my language, a holy shit fund of saying if something happens, that you could go and grab the monies from that specific account. And then lastly, the power is to try to have as much money into this account as possible. So once your step 1 and step 2 is covered, these are your fund monies, and this is where you could really start getting into some fancy things with the trying to grow your excess monies with a proper growth strategy, trying to beat out the pace of inflation, and making sure that you just have all your bases covered. So when calling into the agency, we show you how to create that 3-thing scenario and how to set it up properly. So it's known as the Retire Sharp planning system. A couple of the takeaways, just be mindful. Try to break things down to very simplistic components. So like when you hear match, or you hear contribution, or you hear the rate of return, or the different equities and the investment options, all that, just try to break it down to its most simplistic language. Understand how you can control a contribution side, how you can control a rate of return side, by cherry picking the correct investments. Now, when somebody is working for an employer, they may, let's say if they sever employment, or they have, they're working for a previous employer that had a 401k account, now there's a lot of fun things that you could do, because with a 401k, like I mentioned, a 401k has limited funding options on that rate of return side. So you might have anywhere between 5 to 25 eggs in your basket to choose from. When someone severs employment, well, this is a qualified retirement account. When they sever employment, now that gives them access to this 401k account, and they could roll over those monies into a qualified retirement account known as an IRA. And what that does is it's basically like the same sort of concept, but bucket with a lid over it. This rate of return side on an IRA, instead of it being limited to 5 to 25 different eggs in your basket to choose from, now that could be, have 5,000, 7,000 different options to choose from. So there's just a whole slew of more eggs to choose from. You could have, cheaper cost, higher quality. The mechanisms could be customized a lot better for, as per your risk tolerance. So, be mindful that you don't have to go into these things blindly. You could always ask out, you could always reach out to us for help. We could put together different reports for you and try to really help understand your situation better. But, at the end of the day, I hope that you did find some value there in this video and you understood some of the terminology. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, make sure to click on the link to download your free report for watching this video. What should I do with my old 401k or employer plan? So 401k, 403b, some 457 plans, so you get a customized report there. This could help you bring some further clarity to your situation, give you a little bit more structure regarding your old 401k accounts. Not so much on your current contributing plan. That's probably what an appointment would be better for. So we could run specific risk tolerance related reports and really dissect your funds and put together some analysis for you. We're going to our website, which is going to be in the description of this video, afasifinancial.com, or you can go to retiresharp.com. I'll bring you to the same website. This is how you could schedule an appointment, 15-minute phone consultation. And then obviously you could go and look around the, check out our website and schedule a time that works most convenient for you guys. In closing, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, and we'll be sure to help you guys out the best we can. Once again, 1-800-566-1002. For the best value, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Retire Sharp, so you can have access to the most updated videos. Thanks so much, guys.